So a few months back I made a video on a game called Psychopomp, a psychological horror in the style of a dungeon crawler. And it was a game that I personally really enjoyed. The story had me entertained, the visual and auditorial stylings of the game were really nice, and the gameplay just felt really unique and interesting, and to this day it's still one of my favorite videos that I've ever made. And you guys seem to really like it too, as I've had countless people come to me and tell me about the game's revamp. Like, a lot of you guys. And that's gonna be our topic for today. Psychopomp Gold acts as both a revamp of the first game whilst adding on some new content. If you're already familiar with the game and just want to see me talk about the newer levels, look to the timestamp on screen. However, Gold does update those older levels, so I suggest sticking around to see all the new changes, since I personally found them to be really neat. But starting off the same way that I did in the first video, Psychopomp Gold is a game made by Fading Club, aka Carbonic, and reading from the Steam page itself, Psychopomp is back, the catacombs stretch down further than ever before. Your entire life has been a lie. Delve into the depths and discover the horrors that lie below. More realms, more modes, more secrets. An ancient voice calls to you from the center of the earth. Will you answer it? Return to the world of Psychopomp. Hidden under every building, under every place, is a catacomb. Labyrinths stretching down into the bowels and guts of the world. Everyone has known about them. Everyone has lied to you about them. Descend into the depths. Discover what awaits. The hit horror dungeon crawler is back, now with all sorts of new horrifying cool stuff to see. Explore a classic 3D dungeon crawler world, discover secrets below, and find the truth that awaits. Bizarre, unique creatures are at every turn, and even weirder things lie below. Psychopomp Gold features all new levels, delve deeper than ever before, remastered levels see the horrors in a brand new light, new modes and secrets, discover what is to be seen, find what has been hidden from you, new endings, improved old endings, mod and custom level support, the catacombs will never end, new pre-rendered cutscenes, get a cinematic feel, and third-person mode, a new view in life. Enter the catacombs and immerse yourself in the world that only grows darker the deeper you get. This meat is what the world is made of. Keep your wits about you, watch your back, and survive. Warning, Psychopomp is designed around the Vulkan render, which may not work on older PCs. The game can run on OpenGL, but it is not recommended. After loading up the game, we're greeted with a short cutscene of our main character's head, which, as we'll find out later on, is actually called Venus, so... bye-bye, Pompey. On top of this large mechanical structure that seems to be within a red ocean. Before being shown, the same familiar menu screen, now with new gold text stamped on it and a new option for mods, as that is once again a new feature added into the game. And of course we start the game by selecting Begin and are greeted by the game's starting cutscene, which sets the scene for our main character. Everyone everywhere has secrets. Did you know that everyone has secret powers and they've kept it a secret from me my entire life? But I won't stand for that. That's why I made a helmet. I call it Machine that lets me read people's mind when I want to. Or Psychopomp for short. But something happened when I put it on. It didn't let me read people's minds, but it did let me see something else. A world that was hidden from me, that everyone knew about. A world hidden in plain sight with all sorts of animals and creatures and dead bodies. There are catacombs hidden under every public government building. I will not allow for any more secrets to be kept from me. Starting off our gameplay, we come into the game tutorial segment, finding ourselves in the midst of the canals of a big city. A giant hole bursted into the blue planet up above us. A quick look down at our UI shows us a few things. First of all, being a couple visual improvements along with the general look of the environment around us. Our current health state can be found in the leftmost portrait along with the red bar on the right next to our compass. Similarly, having a purple variant to show our stamina. In the middle of our UI, we have the options of look, speak, touch, and hammer, all being equally important to learn about the world we find ourselves in. And of course, we can open up our inventory to find or use any stored items that we may have picked up as we travel throughout the game. Whilst here, we learn about how to interact with objects and NPCs, namely this dog, which, first of all, will come to be much more important further down the line, and secondly,
Don't idle here. You have much to do. Don't worry, for there is a plan to everything. I'm sure you will see in due time, my friend.
Good, doggy? After making our way into the red mist, we come to the main hub of the game, showing us our available locations as well as 2 new features exclusive to Gold. that being the options of home and call, which I'll come back to at the end of the video. However, to start in order, we can enter the sewage treatment plant. Entering the building, we can make our way around the seemingly normal-looking location. Nothing seems to be out of the ordinary, aside from the insanely unstable light fixture and, oh yeah, the massive hunks of machinery just whirring away at the back of the hall. I think OSHA would like to have a few words with this place. Before we descend into any and all locations, we get a few sentences from Venus, which gives us a few smaller snippets into her own psyche and how she views each of these locations. It's not hard to enter a public building. The buffoon who invented locks and windows has never heard of a hammer. Water treatment, human waste being processed and cleaned, made acceptable for consumption again. Chemicals being added to chemicals to remove chemicals. If water treatment is for our safety and concern, why is there an elevator heading straight down into the human waste? What could be hidden down there? And if it's such a big secret, why is it so easy to go down there? Sick fucks. However, once at the back of the building, we can descend down into the sewers via an elevator. Sewage treatment is our first location where you can really begin to see the yuckier details of the environments we'll come to explore. Combining with the game's shader stylization giving the whole game a more dithered industrial look, most of the textures have this warping, shifting look to them that makes the places themselves seem slimy and gunky, almost alive in their own way. The sewers are clearly unkept as shrubbery has begun to grow in the walls and supports, with massive plant roots even making an appearance occasionally. And as we come to quickly find out, an infestation has made itself very much at home here. Parasitic creatures reside all around the sewers in a few varying forms, some of which can be communicated with. Oh hello, why aren't you a cute one? Say, isn't there nothing better than being tangled up? Would you like to be tangled up? You tried to touch the stalk thing, but it grabbed your hand. You just barely managed to pull your hand free at the last moment. Never doing that again. Behind us is a way further down into the sewers, however before we go down there, we can take a secondary path up these stairs to find a wall, leaking out of which is a pool of blood. Breaking it reveals a secret passage where you can find this partially two-dimensional figure. You might think that you're in pain, but I've been here a lot longer than you. Eventually, it will all become quiet, and all return to symbols. Next to him, we can find a health item next to a page document on the wall. Doctor? I apologize, but this doesn't make any sense. I can't wrap my head around it. All measurements, gravity, trajectory, mass, they're all consistent with a planet noticeably smaller than Earth. There's no way that the Earth lost mass, did it? And what of the Earth that now hangs in the sky? It too looks just like our planet, but far smaller, closer in size to a moon. I don't see how you can deny all of this. Your claim that all of this is simply caused by equipment failure or operator error is absurd. I understand the desire to be skeptical, and I respect what you've done for me over the years, but at some point we need to start looking at what is directly in front of our faces. You're in denial of the situation we have found ourselves in. Signed, this note implying that the blue planet up in the sky we saw during the intro might just be Earth, with ourselves being on another planet which may have bursted out from the inside of it, for reasons currently unknown to us. To our left lies a short tunnel at the end of which is another health item, however that's all from this little secret area, and coming back to where we broke open the wall, we continue down the hall to find two figures standing at the edge of a large pit. Presumably, the bridge is currently down. The two figures belong to a species titled the Freights, and they speak of how they used to be able to run around here, and specifically that they remember the smell of fresh air. As always, keep this in your mind for later. With the other younger Freights speaking of how they're looking for food to bring back to the rest of our colony, hoping to find some at the end of the bridge once it's up. And yes, maybe I did learn the hard way that they're just as killable as everything else here, and no! You don't get any kind of achievement for killing everything in a single run. But now we need to look for a way to get the bridge up, and returning back to that deeper passage, we find an aggressive member of the parasites, which can be swiftly dealt with via hammer, before coming down into a room containing two gates. One of which can be opened from this side of the room, however the other one will have to be opened up later on. Next to the openable gate, a note can be found. April 19th. I feel like I just woke up the other day for the first time. I have memories before Sunday, but they just feel so hazy. So much less vivid. I feel so awake now. so real. I just can't stop smiling. Something good has happened. It's happened. For a self-portrait. It can be assumed that this note was written by our main character in relations to making and putting on the Psychopomp, however, I may be wrong. In another corner of the room, whispering can be heard, which we'll come back to use as a code later on in the video. But much like the other bloody wall, we bash it down to this time find a key bearing an eye symbol. We'll need to collect 6 of these throughout the game. Ignoring the path through the now open gate for now, we can go down another staircase to be greeted by a big locked purple gate. The key to which we can get by first of all dealing with this quicker enemy, which now looks a lot more tongue-like than in the original, before passing by another member of the species and getting down to the bottom where there's 2 paths, one currently blocked off by a locked door. The open path brings us to a room with a smaller creature, guarding a nearby key. My key, my special key. The queen gave it to me. My special love gave it to me. If anyone ever took it, I'd explode. I'd be so mad. And staying true to its word, if we take the key without dealing with the creature beforehand. With the purple key now in hand, however, we can open up the locked gate to find the queen herself, surrounded by 2 other royal nugget creatures. A big guillotine swinging over her head. When interacting with the queen, it's said that she feels like porcelain, and since all of the faces of these creatures never move and all look identical to one another, it's possible that this statement about porcelain hints to the faces being masks rather than actually being a part of the body. The 2 nuggets at the side of the queen explain that the cycle of the species must continue and it's time for the queen to go to make room for the next. And since we're clearly the only one with hands around here, we're tasked with taking the key to the other locked passage below and following it to a lever which brings up the bridge from before. In this same room, we unlock another gate leading back to our previous rooms. Coming back through the shortcut we opened earlier, we can find a cramped passageway leading to a large church-esque building, in the middle of which is a statue resembling that of a humanoid with dragonfly features, in front of which is yet another healing item. Around the back of the building is another member of the freight species. Ah, you startled me. This holy place has been overrun by those sparkle-eyed freaks. I can barely do anything to keep them away. You ever heard of a hammer? Guess not. Back at the bridge, we cross over to find the other younger freight from before. If you hadn't killed them, that is. And they display disappointment at there being nothing over here, however it leads us towards the lever at the end of the room. Pulling it causes a chain to fall before a large thump and cry can be heard. And finally returning back to the queen, it reveals her form to now be beheaded and lifeless. However, a new object is present in front of her corpse. This is an egg of the earth, and in each level we'll travel to, this is our goal. After dumping the egg down towards the depths of the earth in this new animation exclusive to gold, we continue on to our next location. The sewer treatment plant is a really good level to introduce the player to the game's mechanics, having a good spread of enemies giving us a decent grasp on the puzzles we'll come across and the types of environments we'll be coming across. In the previous video I made on this game, I saved this level for last, however since gold expands on the game's content by quite the large chunk, I've opted to just get it over with. Much like with the water treatment plant, we get a short upper segment before descending into the depths below. And also, like our previous location, Venus has a few more things to say. Children's hospitals always have that same smell to them. It's a clean smell that somehow makes you want to vomit, like a mixture of bleach and Elmer's glue. I love it. Doctors will always smile at you when they say they cannot help you. Give them the copay and die more as they tell you that you aren't full of cancer, aren't full of incurable illnesses. Hospitals feel like the safest place to me, even though I know they aren't. Or the least safe place. A place that will swallow you whole and give you a disease. A place that will cut you open and make others feel good about it. And through it all, the elevator is there. I can smell it. That smell of rust and petrol breaking through the clean hospital smell. The door's wide open, waiting for me to enter. The hospital is decorated in text like "you're only sick once," and although I may be biased in saying so, it's a pretty creepy looking hospital. There is no one at the front desk to welcome us, and equipment just seems to be strewn all around the place. The lights barely do their job, and some holes just don't have any to begin with. I mean, no wonder everyone's so sick, there's no fucking daylight in here. But eventually getting to the back of the building, we find another elevator and once again descend down into the lower level of the hospital. Exiting out of the elevator into the dreadful droning ambience of the location, it's immediately noticeable that our face is present on a pair of posters. For whatever reason, we're known here. However, the text is too small to read. There are two paths to the left and right of us, however we'll save those for after exploring the main hall, where we can find one of the many nurses working here. Welcome to the lower wing. Here we help to preserve the most important individuals of humankind, both in honor of their contributions and as a sign for the rest of humanity to follow. In the three doorways behind her, we can find historical figures Alexander the Great, Plato, and Cleopatra. If you don't know who they are or what they're known for, I go into more depth on them in the first video I made about Psychopomp, however they're surrounded by what they are most known for. Alexander's fighting and warfare, Cleopatra's charismatic rule, and Plato is surrounded by children. In Alexander's room, we can find a nurse carrying a keycard which we can grab after killing her, and Cleopatra's room includes a health item. Apart from this though, we can continue by going down the stairs into the hall to the left of the elevator, and turning to the closest end of the hall greets us with another document. Recently uncovered texts reference two enigmatic figures, Sivanash Neri, Queen of Venus, and Krishna Colvin, King of Mercury. Several ancient textiles depict these beings creating the heavenly bodies and weaving the universe. Their names seemingly refer to two fictitious planets, Venus and Mercury respectively, which they held dominion over. It is thought that these figures acted as a subject of worship. However, their descriptions and depictions within the textiles match no known religions or cultures. Figure A. Symbols of the aforementioned deities. Note the upright cross, possibly denoting a connection to Christianity. No dick ticks this time. Next to this document is another secret wall, which houses a floating cochlea along with two paths leading to a group of nurses, who all speak about the process of turning a person into a parasite. Said person now being the giant tick protruding out of the wall. Back in the main hallway, we pass by a doorway only openable via a keycard. Using the one we grabbed previously, we opened a door to reveal a giant mass in the middle of the room, connecting to one of the three figures up above. The lever at the back wall being used to kill them. After avoiding some extensions in the wall, we make it into an open roofed outdoor area with another keycard nurse who we kill and use the keycard on our second door at the end of the hallway, where we use our second lever and notice a gridded wall with another one of those eye-shaped keys on the other side. To get to which, we're going to have to go to the other staircase back by the elevator, and taking a turn to the left, we find a nurse staring at the moon. That, in itself, is staring back. Beautiful night, isn't it? It makes me feel a lot better to know that when I look at the moon, someone is looking back. Down the other way, we can find a long set of those same extensions from the other hall, this time having to deal with a doctor along the way before finding our final keycard on the neck of a nurse at the back of the hall. Using this card, we flip our last lever before bursting open a secret wall, fighting past another doctor and grabbing our second key. And to finally end off the level with all three figures now dead, we re-enter the starting hall and grab our second egg of the earth. The hospital is probably my favorite out of the original 3 levels for ambience. It has this very droney, deep ambient track that pairs well with the darkness of the underground, being barely able to see what's in front of you in the hallways. It also calls out the very monetary view of hospitals, especially in locations that require a lot for medical bills. For a lot of people seeking medical help from these kind of locations, it's impossible due to just the large cost of trying to stay alive, being faced with bills they can't pay while the rich and famous are able to breeze their way through it. Entering the upper segment of the public school, we can find it to have some new fortifications since the first time we visited. New metal gates can be found throughout the halls, and a glass wall now divides the reception from the rest of the school. Some computers remain on from when they were being used, and posters around the school state to keep that smile going. However, Venus's notes stay the same. Cold place where they put the loud kids. When you sleep inside a school, you learn new things. When I sleep inside a school, I taste new things. Through the smell of pencil wood and erasers, I can smell something new. A thick iron smell. I'm getting close. Dead end. I look into each of the classrooms and there are only nerve cell clusters sitting at each of the desks. I close my eyes tightly and I think I might be at the other side of the school. Underneath the school, however, a massive factory lies ahead of us, really pushing the game's industrial stylings to full force. And with only a few steps into the factory, we're greeted by the head of production. Welcome to my factory. I trust that you'll find your own way around here. Nearby, there is also a poem speaking of the stars. Open Valley. When the child looks to the sky, they will make believe about stars, planets, and other impossible lights shining above. When the adult looks to the sky, they will see no light, but take comfort in it. There is no danger in nothingness. When the dead look to the sky, they will smile and close their eyes, seeing that there was light all along. The text "Stupid, there are no stars" has been written over the original poem. Coming through the archway into the rest of the factory, we can find 3 paths lay before us, the middle of which will only lead us up to the head of production, who has tasked us with turning off 2 safeguards to activate the machine which surrounds his head. One which will kill him when activated and therefore put him out of the suffering that he's currently enduring. But of course, before we can do that, we need to actually go and shut off those safeguards, starting off with the path to our left, which leads us past 2 different one-way paths we'll be coming through later on, and to a series of crushers, which we must carefully time our movement to avoid being hit by. Luckily, the area has been made slightly easier and only knocks down health now instead of being an instant kill like before, but we can still get an achievement for dying to them. At the end of the path, we can find a worker who congratulates us for being a reckless, protocol-breaking individual. And past him, we can find the first of the 2 safeguards in a place that's seemingly growing parasitic enamel, very similarly to the work of the parasite's prison at the hospital. Oh god damn it, is the head of production trying to kill himself again? Let me guess. He sent you here so you can crush his skull. Not gonna happen, dumbass, get the hell out of here. Through observations, it tells us that he'll guard the button with his life. And so he will. With 1 safeguard down, we return to the first area with the free paths via one of those one-way paths I mentioned earlier. But we then make our way down the right hallway, being able to turn off down a new path to the left. And after making our way through 2 faster monsters covered in gears, we can find a worker nearby a PSI meter, giving us the opportunity to mess around with it. To the left of the machine, another leaky wall gives us our 3rd key, but aside from that, we return to the start of the right pathway, either via the second one-way path or just retracing steps to find another type of entity made of gears, this one floating off the ground. 2 of these can be found in this hall, and after making our way through them, we find another room containing the second safeguard, guarded by yet again another worker, who reacts very similarly to the first and therefore is dealt with the same way. Next to this second safeguard, we can find that the factory melts down the kids from the school into useless items such as plastic butter knives and egg slicers. With the second safeguard now down, we can finally make our way to the head of production, who has a few final words. My life has turned into an endless line of misery and illness. I beg of you, if you have any mercy in your soul, please kill me, and make it as painful as possible. After pressing the button in front of him, the head of production is crushed, with the speed of the animation dependent on how much you messed around with the PSI machine from earlier. The higher the number, the faster the animation. But he leaves us with our 3rd egg of the earth. Much like the hospital, the public school pulls the perspective of schools only gifting us with useless information. Much like the egg slicers the factory turns its kids into, they're only really useful for one thing: slicing eggs. Similarly to exam scores or grades, they're only really useful into getting you into another school or college or university, or for qualifications for certain jobs. Most of the time entirely relying on out-of-school education to teach you about valuable life lessons or basic needs. And not to mention just the horrible environments that schools bring and create. They have you wishing that you were an egg slicer. After visiting all 3 locations, the option to descend appears before us. However, before we go and do so, the game has a few secret quote-unquote locations to head to, named Transient Locations. These smaller places offer a little bit more insight into the lore of the game, and as we'll continue the game's descent, we'll find more and more of them in a few different forms. On this first level, and similarly for each one to follow, there are 4 separate locations we can venture to. The starting point is a large open room containing a cocoon/chrysalis-like object at the end of it. Don't ask me to pronounce that properly. I'm not going to. A freight stood close by in observation. When nobody was looking, the queen's chrysalis hatched. That means that she's out there. Who knows where? I can't help but fear there are vermin dogs who would lead her astray. I must have faith. The queen will return. The unnamed location is a small dark room with 2 floating orbs. As we enter, they light up and they seem to act as a place of communication. Hey, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Good. I hope you're doing well. This is boring here. I'm dying of boredom. Can't stand the desert. Ugh. What's the status? The queen? She's awake, but still dormant, trying to hide. Doesn't matter though. Her progress is perfect. What about the other one? The king is still fast asleep, like a big dumb snoring baby. Good. Do not wake him up until I tell you to. The last thing we need is to deal with both of them at the same time. Not until everything is ready. Oh, do we have to? There's nothing to do around here. Especially these old puppets. They're boring, not like the real thing. These ones don't squirm right, and they make such a mess when they pop. Have patience. Soon we'll have more fun than ever before. Duh, if you say so. You're the boss. Am I a good boy? The best of all boys. The king of all boys. Once we see you again, I'll give you a big nice burn. Sounds lovely. I'll look forward to that. Oh, wait, is this channel secure? It should be. Not like it matters. Nobody listening can do anything. It's pretty safe to make the assumption that at least one of the two people in this conversation is the dog we saw at the start of the game, seeing as the other communicator quite literally calls it the king of all boys. Fitting thing to say when talking to the king of all dogs. However, it's quite important to note the bringing up of these dogs so often so far, being also briefly mentioned in the starting point. We can also see this figure stood up top by a window also observing the conversation. Who this is meant to be, however, is currently unknown to me. After seeing them being present in the other locations, it's no surprise that we get to come across the Freight's actual village. Entering the location, we find the Freights to be stored up in an underground location. The village is scattered with various symbols, some relating back to those we saw at the hospital, or the symbolic man at the sewers. However, from walking around and talking to the various village members, we can find that they're not doing so good at all, being forced to eat whatever scrap waste they come across, such as leftover burgers or rats. And interestingly enough, one Freight speaks of how they witnessed a human being hit by a car. However, that they crumbled into dust and clay rather than the expected blood and flesh. Something to keep in the back of your mind for later. And finally, for this first set of secret locations, we come to Daddy's bad place, a small room resembling a room in a house. However, most of the walls have been broken open to reveal a void outside of the room. The main interest in the room being the TV placed on the opposite wall from where we enter. After a while of being in the room, the TV comes to life.
Repeat. At 3:45 a.m. today, a state of emergency was declared following the appearance of a large unknown insect-like creature in the Melbourne borough of Central City. The creature is unpredictable and is considered to be highly dangerous. This is not a drill. If you are inside, stay inside. If you are outside, find the nearest shelter. If you are thinking, stop thinking. The insect may appear to you as a human. It is not. It is an aberration of your imagination and does not exist. Stay away from the insect, as it is highly dangerous. Do not attempt to communicate with the insect, as it is highly dangerous. The insect is not real. The insect is not real. The insect is not real.
This insect can be linked back to the chrysalish we saw earlier. The mention of it appearing human is something to keep in mind. After this, however, we come to what would previously be the end of the old game content, and can begin our descent into the entirely new levels that Gold has to offer us. In this second layer, we only have 2 levels to choose from instead of the prior 3, and making a start into the hard structures level, we find ourselves in another alley. This time surrounded by tall concrete buildings. Hard structures are all around us. What is a building? What forms the dirt beneath our feet? How does it think? How does it respirate? What does a hard structure eat? Earth is created of buildings that we make. After descending down to the lower part of the level, we find the environment to have changed to a deep red structural abomination. Surrounding us is a large red ocean, and generally the whole location is just a bit more open and vast than the prior levels. Giant moths scatter the mash of living buildings, and strange fleshy extremities can be seen just out of our reach. Getting to the top of the first ramp, in front of us we can meet a resident. What a shame, our young buildings are afflicted with a bad case of parasitic silkworms. Even if we kill all of them, it'll take months for the open source to heal. From the looks of things, the moths are not well taken to and become part of the task set out for us here. Namely, with us having to get rid of them by collecting a few items to make a pesticide that'll clear them out of the area. To our left, we can find a set of dumpsters, great addition if you ask me. And after bashing through some silkworm eggs and dealing with one of the level's floating enemies, we can descend down to a lower walkway where we deal with yet another creature. This time far larger and stronger. Down here we can find some silkworm eggs and one of our ingredients. Going past the staircase leads us to a separate area where through some metal grating we can see another ingredient on the other side, being guarded by another floating enemy. Coming back to our first fork in the road, we can now take the right path leading to the sphincter. But there's one issue. Well, isn't this great? That's the main root sphincter, isn't it a beaut? Problem is, with all these muffs around, it's closed up tight, so we can't go and check up on the roots of these buildings until they're gone. What a pain. While we're already on the look for these ingredients, we now know its main use of becoming a pesticide to getting rid of these moths will allow us to get into the main root of the buildings around us. Continuing up, what a horrible sound! We can take note of the next key being behind these silkworm strings, the only way to get rid of them being to clear off every egg on the map. Fuck it. Before this is done, however, we can go up to the left path to find a path leading back down to our second ingredient. Once again guarded by another floating enemy, and another hallway covered in these wiggly meaty things that hurt us if we stand in them for too long. Rushing through them, however, brings us to probably one of the worst noises imaginable. The Innermen are just one of those designs that freak me out, and honestly, I'm so glad that they're just an NPC to talk to and not an actual threat. Because, good god, are they creepy to me. Unlike the next thing that I wish just didn't exist. Piss Lipid! Its name is fucking Piss Lipid! Up at the top of this section, however, we can find the funnel to make the pesticide, however, we're still missing our last ingredient. But make sure to get this egg before going back down, if you want to get the key. Once back at that horrific noise from earlier, we go through another path into a section more resemblant of a street, with cars melted into the floor of the zone. And coming to the further part of the area, we can take a left to find our last ingredient hidden behind another large leg monster. To the right, there's another clicking Innerman, and up at the top of the stairs, we can find another set of eggs. And while I may have missed a few eggs, if you manage to get them all, then the webbing blocking the key should be gone and you can just go and grab it. Now at the top of the funnel, we can drop our free ingredients in and watch as it spreads out around the buildings, killing any and all moths present. And since the moths are now gone, the sphincter is now able to be travelled into, and underneath the level, we can find one last residence stood by the main root of the structures. This is the Great Taproot, all buildings owe to it. Every building you've ever seen is simply a genetic clone of this taproot. Please be careful around it is very sensitive. With the structures around now utterly destroyed, we can grab our next egg of the earth. The meaning and symbolism of this level was a lot harder for me to figure out than the others. Aside from the sewer treatment plant, I still really don't know what that one's about. Maybe something to do with living off of the work of others? I don't know. But the level seems to have a lot of themes of influences and parasites. I mean, the whole game kind of has the theme of parasiticism. That's definitely not a word. But it has a lot of parasites in it. And with the whole thing being one big structure and the building beds having this sort of parental relationship with the structures, I believe that this is talking about the way that neighborhoods and or families often want their children to grow up in a certain way, making them line up with their own moralities and personal views, oftentimes going at lengths to get rid of anything they deem to be a bad influence. But I may be looking into things too much. But can you really blame me for thinking that a game about a schizophrenic woman building a mind-reading helmet and breaking into government buildings to find secret dungeons filled with parasitic organisms, factories using children as materials, and a hiding species of furry women wouldn't have any kind of commentary on society put into it? And that's up to you. The hard structures level was where I really began to notice those shifting textures I mentioned earlier, and with the buildings being literally alive, it makes a lot of sense. And just generally, for the first new level of Gold, I think that it's a great show of improvement from the first game. As we'll see for the rest of the levels, they're a lot more open and vast, and it seems like Carbonic was really able to give a lot more life to these places. And since we're a lot further underground now, it makes sense for the areas to be a lot more open, as we're no longer confined to the other surrounding buildings in the city up above anymore. And also, things are just generally gonna get a lot more strange from here. Coming into the instructions, a bit late in the game for those, we find that Venus is beginning to take a decline as her once confident phrases become that of confusion. Huh? What kind of place is this? What do these buildings do? Why is this place? Elevator. This first area is remnant of some kind of freezer with genetic themes, some kind of genetical clinic. I don't know. But we can notice that the area has now already opened up to us, with there being no roof at all in the second room. Underneath, however, I can say with full confidence that we're introduced to one, if not my favorite track in the whole game, going on par with the music used for the intro of the game. It once again fully embodies the game's industrial style and gives off the feel that something is really going on down here. Our left and right paths are currently blocked off, so going forwards we find a giant fleshy creature to be blocking the way through the tunnel ahead of us. Using the device in front of it, we grab some of its DNA and deactivate the gates blocking our other paths, and get to searching for both a place to scan the DNA as well as unblocking the 3 locks preventing us from using this injector machine. Starting with the path to the right of the elevator from when we walked in. We encounter our first enemy with a ranged attack. They shoot at the same timed interval, so you can just time it right and they're pretty easy to dodge. But it's still cool to see nonetheless. Once at this corner with this dangly entity, we can turn around to find a nooked off passage, with another secret key at the end of it. And for me, this was by far the hardest one to find. I ended up having to replay the game 4 different times just trying to get all the keys, but I'll talk about that later on. I am the Origin who decides how you will suffer. Would you like a blood clot disorder? A brain that doesn't work? It's up to me to decide that. And it's an important job, thank you very much. If you can think of a better system, I'd like to see you try. Up the stairs we come to our first lock, and much like in the public school factory, we just interact with it to turn off one of the 3 locks. This isn't the only route available to take on this side, however, and taking the other path leads us to our second lock switch after passing by another ranged enemy. We can also take note of this one-way path before making our way to the left side of the map, where we can find 2 separate passages in front and to the left of us. Taking the left path first, we simply pass by 2 more ranged entities before taking a look at these gross little fetus guys and ascending up a staircase and looping around to these 3 heads, on top of what appear to be lighters, before we get to where we scan the fleshy thing's DNA. Through the doorway, we have to deal with a 4-legged little guy and then input the DNA sample at this machine. Doing so gives us a 4-letter code, one which will be crucial to figure out what we need to inject into the fleshy thing later on. After passing back through that one-way passage and making our way back to the 2 paths from before, we go straight and talk to this second little dangly guy. I am the Origin who decides how you will decay. I've got a collection of wonderfully flawed chromosomes that I've put together for you. I put a lot of thought into this. The least you can do is be grateful. You can't blame me. I'm only working with the instructions I received. Up the stairs we come across our final lock as well as a library where behind another creature we can find a note giving us instructions for our code. Remember, DNA is fun to manipulate, but it can also be unstable. When creating a DNA strand, the genetic code must follow this rule to be stable. Nucleotides must be perfectly transcribed to their proper partner to create a stable codon. G is bonded to C and vice versa. A is bonded to T and vice versa. A mismatch here will lead to a corruption. The more mismatched, the more genetically unstable the host body will become. So be careful. We don't want to cause a mess. Remember, your genetic code input must contain one of each of these, no duplicates allowed. So coming back to the injector, we put in the most unstable form of the DNA strand, in this case being GTAC, causing the creature to perish, unblocking the way forward. What did you do? You injected something into the primordial information, didn't you? It's all dying. It's all spreading and dying. There's no more DNA. There's no more instructions. Oh god, what do we do? And despite all the destruction we've caused here, we still get another egg of the earth. For commentaries, these entities are seen to purposely cause misery and suffering as it's just their role for them and it's what has to be done. Just kind of doing as they have been told with the instructions that they have been given. The whole place just has this vibe of an establishment where everyone has their own role, quote unquote, and they're all forced to be just kind of accepting it for whatever reason or because it's for the greater good or whatever it is. It's a lot tied into the phenomenon that people will be more likely to do morally incorrect things if somebody else has told them to do it and they will therefore take the blame for it. I knew my 1 month of college psychology would come in at some point. This level was also where I began to realize the ongoing leitmotif the game has of combining flesh and machinery. So that's just a nice note. This level is also good for anyone doing a 100% attempt at the game. It's a good level for getting the achievement Peaceful Pump, since most of the enemies are ranged and only one of the 2 moving enemies are a required encounter, and even then they can be ran from pretty easily after getting the genetic code. I also have no idea if that's actually required though, or if you can just guess the code at the end. Much like in the first layer, we have a few secret locations to look at, this time named Ephemeral Locations. Entering the building, it pretty much just looks like an ordinary small little museum. There isn't much to see at the front, but going around to the back gives us free little additions to what we know.
The first sentient species on our planet were humans. These hairy bipeds were highly intelligent and are thought to have used tools. They were highly emotive, making them very fun. The last human died in captivity years ago, and none have been seen since. After the humans went extinct, the Thraits evolved. These creatures lived in small societies and did nothing of note. They were strong and stoic, which proved very annoying. The last Thrait died in captivity years ago, and we are better for it. After the Thraits went extinct,
The humans evolved.
At some point in time, Earth had 3 different main inhabitants. The first set of humans, the ordinary fleshy ones, then they were wiped out and taken over by the Thraits, who were then later forced underground, and then these new clay humans started appearing. A smaller segment only really consisting of these 3 rust mothers. You can of course interact with them, however all of them just kind of talk about them being responsible for all of the rust in the world. At the Hollow Nursery, we go through a few flights of stairs before entering a large open room with 4 fittingly large entities, all bearing the same hollow face. At the end of a few arches, we can find that same dragonfly-esque figure from the church in the sewers, a larger version staring down from above. A member of the Thraits is nearby. My everlasting queen, where have you gone? Even now the hollow constructs stir from their slumber, ready to act on your will, so I know you must be with us. I am resolute. But how much longer must we wait? Apart from that though, there isn't anything else to do here. And finally, the human seatbed leads us down some stairs before coming across what is supposedly a human being. However, they clearly look nothing like us and are barely even able to form any kind of full cognitive speech, seeming more of just regurgitated words and phrases than any kind of personal opinion. This is also where we get to see what that one Thrait meant about a human being hit by a car and breaking into clay, since these humans line up a lot more of that kind of look. At the back of the area, a few more humans can be found, however with not much to do here, we can just make our way back and... That's us. Clay can be molded, I guess. Honestly, seeing this visual for the first time come into view was pretty spooky, and it got me pretty good on my first playthrough. Our last main location for the game leads us to the symbols, just like the symbolic man at the start of the game had stated. In our first section, we oddly don't get a single word from Venus. The room itself is a very short one, even shorter than the 2 prior, and as we begin to enter the elevator to descend down to the lower level, it's shown that we're already here. After the walls blast off, the level's vast open space is truly revealed. A massive structure covered by those same eye symbols can be seen off in the distance, with 4 large towers shooting off from it. Coming up to the main front of the structure, we can find a symbol blocking our way to the door. We're not convinced of you. You do not seem to understand anything. These doors will only open for you once you come to understanding with this world and what makes it. Killing it to get it out of the way, we find that the front door is locked anyway, so taking the path to the right, we enter a dark building with quite a few winding hallways before coming across this massive mechanical entity. And I suggest grabbing this hidden health item first, as we'll come to find that the entity is blocking the way forward. And in order to get past it, we must hit it, which sets it to aggro on us. And we must find a way to loop around it and avoid its flames, making our way out the other side of the building. To our left, one of the offshooting towers lays, and going inside of it greets us with one of 4 paragons, this first one being the Paragon of Flesh. I am the paragon of flesh. I used to fly over the lands, invigorating the muscles and sinew of the world. Do you know the meaning of flesh? The meat is our souls given anchor. Once killed, we collect one of 4 paragon keys needed to unlock the gate at the front. It's stated that we now understand flesh, and coming back down the tower, a spot to teleport back to the center can be used. The way to the left is a bit more simple, only requiring us to walk through a straight hallway with a symbol entity in it before meeting the paragon of people. I am the paragon of people. People are where it all comes together. Every layer builds upon layers and becomes a single person. These layers can now look back on former layers and comprehend them. People are the most important aspect. They form the others. Same thing as last time, we kill it and get another key, and we now understand people. Going up from the left route takes us to this art gallery in which there are a few different sculptures and some abstract looking art. Going up the stairs, we take a wrap around the building, eventually finding our way along a winding path down to the roof of the Paragon of People's Tower, where after finding 2 symbol entities, we find our final secret key. Taking a one-way path back to the art gallery, we can now use the 2 second-floor paths to get to the last 2 towers. To the right, these 2 chewed-up gum-looking guys begin to walk towards us and use this blue ring around them to attack. We must occasionally back up in order to not get hit by it. After defeating them though, we go up another set of stairs before coming across a series of swinging blades. We must time our sprints well enough as to not get hit by them. At the end, the Paragon of Symbols can be found. I'm the Paragon of Symbols. I feel the geometry of the world, and the mathematical crash that appears behind me. Colors and shapes, lines and curves. The digit means stuff that makes you up. Read it and weep. Kill me to learn. We repeat the same process and now understand symbols. And finally, coming to our last tower, we take the left path from the gallery and come to a series of electrified columns. Once again, timing is key, and at the end we meet our final paragon, the Paragon of Concepts. I'm the Paragon of Concepts. Concepts give birth to symbols, symbols give birth to concepts. Without each other, they are worthless. You are a collection of flesh concepts. Rinse, repeat, we understand everything now, and with all 4 Paragon keys, we unlock the gates and take our final egg of the earth. For a final main level, Symbols was pretty fun. It introduced a few new ways of fighting and dealing with the enemies around us. However, my one gripe with it, and it's mainly a gripe that I have with the rest of the game as a whole, is the lack of checkpoints. Since the other levels are relatively short enough to be fine with dying in, it's less of an issue there, but in this longer level where we have to do a lot of time traveling between places, the heavy damage that can be taken relatively easily, especially in an area like the Swinging Blades where I had to repeat the level again since they had desynced and made it impossible for me to get through them without being hit. It can be pretty annoying. Same with the entire game as a whole. Once you beat a level, you can't go back to it unless you restart the whole game again, making things like finding the keys really hard to do because if you miss one, that's it, you have to play the whole game again to try and find it. Apart from that though, the visual style of the area is definitely fitting of the final level, and the introduction of already being in the lower level from the start is definitely something to think about on later. And with only one main level here, a lot of its final layer's content comes from its secret levels, this time being titled the Aberrant levels. Our first Aberrant location takes us to this small room we have floating rock hovering. Contained on it is 2 drawings of 2 humanoid figures with wings coming out of their head. Blood seemingly dripping off of them as if the wings had just grown out of them. The figure on the left seemingly pretty resemblant of our main character. Nature features a long path exited through a claustrophobic hallway. The path is lined with these twitchy, aggressive birds, and at the end of the path we can find the avatar of nature.
Blood, food, hungry, eat, need, run, fell, cut open, warm, fell, want, grab, kill, mind? Find, fuck, use, penetrate, teeth, sharp, touch, smell, taste, hair, rough, wet. Cold, rip, look, hide, run, scream, terror, impulse.
Turning around, a face can be seen over where we entered from. This level puts us into a long spiraling staircase, at the bottom of which is a set of signs stating, hand of a father, hand of a mother, heart of a child, mind of a demon. Before we come across this visual set of smiling faces, disembodied hands, and a creature reminiscent of a nervous system. Not much else here besides that though. Special Showers takes us to a tiled hallway. Along the path, we're forced into a side room by some wooden boards, where we can hear the sounds of nature through its open roof. Back in the hallway, through a second doorway, however, we continue until coming up to an entity inside of a bathtub, pipes preventing us from getting any closer to it. The figure stands up and begins wailing a strange noise. It uses the same model as her own, except devoid of flesh, with blue hair and a crown. I think it's best if we just leave it alone. Coming to the end of the game, we find ourselves in a deep abyss, seemingly at the bottom of a Mariana Trench. The area is winding and covered in these giant heads waving about. They all seem to speak nonsense, so passing by them all, we make our way into this light area, revealing itself to be a deep temple, inside of which is a large figure on the ground. A member of the Freights yet again nearby. Behold, the throne of the queen, and upon it, the sacred dermis which she shed when entering her great metamorphosis. Step lightly. This is a hallowed place. Going down a set of stairs, we find one last light in the dark. Entering it, we appear to be at the core of the planet. The eggs we've collected thus far circle around a structure in the middle of the frame. Strange symbols fly around the whole thing. Interacting with the thing in the center gives us this cutscene. In the final moments of the game, Venus reveals herself to be this dragonoid humanoid we've been seeing throughout the game, and I'll put some more on that at the end. We still have a little bit more to go. After the entrance is played through, a new location titled the Forbidden Location appears, just taking on the form of a library, at the back of which we find a document talking about a strange event that's been occurring. Column 4, the brilliant interstellar phenomenon lighting up our skies. I don't feel that I need to introduce you to the Column 4, the interstellar phenomenon that's been making headlines for the last month. One only has to look to the skies to see the bizarre sight. 4 brilliant lights leading what looks like a trail of absolute darkness across the night sky. The phenomenon has elicited all sorts of reactions, from wonder to outright panic. Many religious leaders have pointed to the Kalman 4 being a sign for jubilation, or the end of times to come. But what are they really? The answer is, we don't really know. The Kalman 4 were first discovered on January 16, 2021 by Harris Kalman, a worker of the Green Bank Observatory in Green Bank, West Virginia. At the time, they were characterized as a set of several superheated interstellar objects, moving through space at speeds previously unheard of. But what of that dark space behind them? Though it might look as if the stars have simply disappeared, leading scientists assure that the stars are most likely still there, but that their light has been absorbed and hidden from us by a way of a phenomenon known as Heath-Nightdale absorption. Light is absorbed into a trail of the Kalman door and expelled out at both sides, known as the photon edge. Four large eyes are suddenly on us, and we're forced to quickly run out of the library. We were not supposed to be here. We wake up as a new character, and this one is seemingly the other figure shown in the ancient future place. We find ourselves in the middle of a desert at a motel. The giant planet up in the sky now red, presumably we ourselves are on the giant blue planet we see at the start of the game. Our UI is a lot more futuristic and clean looking, and taking to the suit our new character is wearing, it's safe to assume that this character is a lot more uptight and orderly than Venus is. In fact, we can call this guy Mercury for now. In the parking lot of the motel, the dog from the start of the game can be seen.
How nice to meet you. I do say, my good sir, your face seems to have broken and become abstracted. No matter, it happens to the best of us. We have more important things at hand. I am the king of all dogs, and I bring you a very important warning. Look to the skies. Do you not feel it? When you set your eyes upon the bloody earth above, do you not see it? Something terrible has awoken. Soon it will descend upon the landscape and bring about utmost destruction. I must beseech you. You must put an end to it. Only you have the power to do so. I know a business-minded individual like yourself will have no problem figuring this out. We must make haste. I have some associates that I will introduce you to right away. Come along now. There is no time to lose.
And psych, we have one more level to do. Now playing as Mercury, our UI has changed drastically, now being a Karma Blue instead of the previously aggressive red. And coming into our only level as him, we go to the meeting place, and we can even see the change in personality through the loading screen. Venus's screens speak of paranoias and conspiracies, while, for a lack of better words, Mercury just tells us to lock the fuck in. Once at the meeting place, we still remain in the open air of the desert, no descending for us. And instead of a hammer, we wield ourselves a nail. In front of us is the king of all dogs yet again.
I apologize for this arbitrary holdup. I spoke to my compatriots earlier and told them that we would be at this meeting at this exact time. But they aren't here. Would you go look for them? Once you find them all, we can continue to our place of meeting.
We must fetch 3 different people from all around the level to proceed, starting by taking the path to the right, where we can find a whole new species named the Aberrant. Strong creatures who appear to be more bug-like in nature than the freight of the Red Planet. They tell us that this place is not safe for us. Going up, we encounter an enemy of the area before speaking to one of the 3 people we're tasked with fetching. A flower is a very special thing. Its beauty is captivating, and yet it brings a stench of death, a deadly poison. What kind of flower can I give you, sir? The dog wants me? I'll be there. Assuming that he'll just be at the start once we collect everyone, we go down the downwards path from the Aberrant and after another enemy come across a little girl. Everyone loves puppets. Especially puppets themselves. Oh good, it's you, I was getting so bored here. I'll meet you there. By the way, what do you think about puppets? With the right side explored, we take to the left and come up a spiral staircase to a small winding area with an enemy in it, before getting to a path lined with beetle-like humanoid statues. At the end of it is our last person to grab. Oh hello, I've been expecting you. Tell me, do you prefer pythons or constrictors? There are so many kinds of snakes, each more beautiful than the last. Am I needed? I'll head there now. And back at the entrance, the door is now open and we can find the group to be waiting for us inside of this hollowed out area. But before we can get to any talking, our actions taken by Venus affect us on the other planet and seemingly set off some kind of horrors over there. As well as this, we're teased for a second game and unlock a third-person mode where we can now see Venus's model as we play, and have her blaring blue eyes flashes anytime we move. Mercury's area doesn't have any secret locations, however we do have a few more smaller things to look at before we continue to the analysis. First of all, throughout the game we've collected 6 keys in total. Home is where those come into play. Starting off, we find ourselves, well, at home. This section has a unique 2D style to it that I personally think looks really nice. And in Venus's home, we can find a mattress next to a table with a radio on it. Definitely a minimalist design. Using our first key, we're able to step outside and find a towering building in the center of this new zone. To the left is a complaining entity. I'm so damn tired of this. Look all around you. Look how gray it all is. Everything has been turned into day soup. It's all your fault. You hate me, don't you? Stop making the world gray. Stop doing this to me. And to our right is an entity who speaks in bodily stats. Cerebrospinal fluid at 80%. Nutritional fibrotic cell health wavering at a grade of approximately 60%. Musculoskeletal system reacting poorly. Please be advised. Open longsword detected. Head like a DOA. Psychopomp efficiency currently at 0%. For more diagnostics, please subscribe to a platinum membership. Here we use our second key and enter an area covered in scribbles. Make what you will with that. The third key used takes us to this open underground city-looking space with an entity titled Libido. Hello there. I am Libido. Everything that is wonderful, those things that make you so happy and make your toes curl, those come from me, dear. You don't have to thank me. Everything I do is for my own sake. Thank you very much. Very fitting name. After passing by this horrid-looking site, probably a visual into Pompey's mental state, we use another key and inside of a dump site very similar to the game's tutorial, we find another entity, reflecting some kind of view on bodily image. We pass by another building before along a path we have to use yet another key, where things look quite normal before we find ourselves in a fleshy-looking environment full of holes. Tryptophobic? Tryptophobic? Whatever the fear of holes is, people, eat your holeless hearts out. There's another entity here waiting for us. I looked at the wall today and felt like it was made of dirt. I could trace all of the patterns which crawled up the side of the drywall. It was only for a split second, but I wish I never saw that. Down the hall behind us, we use our final key and enter Venus's brain. Itself is seen above us in the room. Attached to metal pipes, probably referencing the Psychopomp's effect on her. Even if the entity from earlier says that it has no effect on her. It's possibly still having some effect on her via placebo. And through the last door, we come to a previous memory from long ago. In a deep forest, we find multiple structures reminiscent of the building style of a church found in the sewers. The moon above is a bright red coloration. A fountain can be found before we walk towards two figures standing off in the distance in front of some kind of shrine-like place. Hey, give it back! What is it? Some sort of metal stick? A nail? Huh? It's my nail! I need it, so give it! A nail? What can you do with a nail? I like hammers better. It's better than a hammer. I can build stuff with it. Now give it back! Ha! You're funny. What's your name? Not gonna tell you. Bleh. Tell me or I'm not gonna give it back. Mercury. That's a funny name. Here, catch. I'm Venus. Let's be friends. Oh, don't make that face, I'm sorry. Say, you got a funny face. You're mean. Come on, let's be friends. I'll show you a secret. Secret? How to catch dragonflies. They're the coolest bug ever. Beetles are cooler. Beetles? Lame. No way they're cooler. Mercury likes beetles. A beetle could beat your little dainty dragonflies any day. Yeah, right. Show me then. Bring it on. The names Venus and Mercury are confirmed here for our two main characters, as well as how they met and how different they are personality and morally. And finally, before our full analysis, calling is another feature added into Gold, similarly to Home. And with the options of a few different 4-digit numbers, we have a few phone calls to listen to. Starting with 3687, spelling out 4.
Hey everybody, let's have fun today. What kind of fun do I have in mind? I've got a game to play. What kind of game is it? Well, let's say it's a game of tricks. It's a game of traps and twists and turns. But I think you're really gonna enjoy it. And I think we're all gonna get along just fine.
2847, spelling out bugs.
I'm so fucking tired of these damn bugs. Every which way I go, it's mantises or beetles or other shit. I can't stand them. I can't stand the way they crunch, the way they smell, the sounds they make, and these damn worlds they create. But don't worry. We won't be dealing with bugs for very long.
9676, spelling out worm.
It should come as no surprise that worms would get jealous. Left in the dirt, left to rot. In the mire beneath the darkness of the world, the worms might wonder, and the worms might try.
2639, spelling out body.
Every night I've dreamed of a flayed woman in my bathtub. She sits there, submerged waist-high in a mass of her own sliced flesh, splashing her near-skeletal hands in and out of the frothy remains, and looks at me with a smile, excitedly playing in the delight of flesh becoming an object, separate from oneself, and completely discernible from the whole. The flesh is old and has turned gray, far more than could ever have possibly come from her, and yet it is all from her. She stands up, moving without muscle, only slight tendon on her bones, and crawls out of the tub and runs through the yard, dancing in joy of that holy release, at that ability to finally be free.
5464, spelling out king.
Hello, you've reached the Arroyo Inn. I'm very sorry, but there are no vacant rooms at the moment. If you're calling for a guest, he's currently asleep. Please leave a callback number and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks. Bye.
9753, spelling out wild.
You know, I had a dream the other night. I was running through a big open field. And I just felt like I could keep running forever. And I could end up anywhere I wanted to go. It was like the dream had its fingers in the here and now, but that it was dipping its toes into some other water. Just a dream, I guess.
And 3647, spelling out dogs.
I'm just getting so overwhelmed by the smell. It's in me, it's in my skin and in my teeth. It covers my eyes, too. Man's best friend, huh?
Those are all that I've found since recording. If any new ones have been found since then feel free to share them below. And finally, what a lot of you have been waiting for. What was all of that? From what we find throughout the game, Venus and Mercury are of course the Queen of Venus and the King of Mercury, one represented by a dragonfly, the other a beetle, two opposites. Both stylistically, morality, and just overall they're just pretty opposite. Venus is chaotic and aggressive, wielding a hammer meant for destruction, whilst Mercury is serious and stoic, wielding a nail used for construction. At some point in the past, these two figures were strong deities and king and queen of their planets respectively. But for whatever reason, most commonly I've seen it being related to some form of cycle, both lose their memories and possibly their bodies and are forced to regain their knowledge of who they once were. Which is what we see Venus do at the end of the game, when she comes back to the more dragon-like features that we see in the ending cutscenes. assisted by the watchful eye of the King of all Dogs and the 3 other entities we come across at the epilogue of the game, who can also be related to the Caldon 4, which is why they show up when we're in the forbidden location, since they're watching over our progress. However, this assistance is more selfish in reasoning, and from the surprise and sudden crashing of the final meeting at the end of the game, it appears that on Venus's side, she ascended back to this form far sooner than expected. In the first video that I made on Psychopomp, I talked about a poem that you can find hidden away on the Fading Club website after inputting a code found spoken from a wall in the sewers. The poem goes as follows. Fun. Fun's most fun when it's with you, from sky to shining star, together forever it's true, to travel near and far. If we break too many toys and that makes you blue, we'll reunite that king and queen and make the world anew. Fun will be eternal then, we'll play forevermore. The toys will now have lives again, the better for us four. In that previous video, I assumed that the 4 figures were the King of all Dogs, the Freight species as a whole, and Venus and Mercury. However, we now know that these 3 humanoid figures are the other meeting members. And from the implications of the poem, these 4 wish to make Venus and Mercury reunite, to make new toys for them after destroying all the previous ones. Once again, this links them back to the Caldon 4 mentioned earlier, linking the toys to the many stars and planets in the sky, since they've seemingly been getting absorbed and being destroyed or whatever the fuck is happening to them with the Caldon 4, with it being shown that now only Mercury and Venus remain in the solar system, and with the extinctions of the other human making them also the only humans left. Looking through a timeline of events, these 4, with their very sadistic and violent way of playing, quote-unquote, seemingly wiped out the entire human race, save for Venus and Mercury, or at least, whatever reincarnation of them we see in the game. But they once found these humans to be very entertaining. Then, the Freights evolved, but they didn't like them nearly as much, and due to their attempts at wiping them out, the Freights were forced underground to stay alive. Then the 4 attempt to recreate the human race with these clay replicas, but don't get it twisted, we see both Venus and Mercury bleed, so they are truly of the first human race, not one of these clay replicas. But through whatever happening, Venus is now on the red planet and makes the Psychopomp, which, through whatever delusion, she believes that she's now seeing the secrets that have been hidden from her. However, as we see from the body stat guy in Home, it had never really worked to begin with, or at the very least, isn't working now. She goes through the levels in-game over time, coming to the realization that she was once this Queen of Venus and makes new life at the center of the planet, which, either intentionally or just through coincidence, also brings ties to Greek deities, specifically Venus and Mercury, the goddess of fertility and the god of finances, leading into Mercury's attire of a businessman. But after this new life is formed, Venus starts this huge event which retroactively crashes the meeting occurring on the other planet, where Mercury has been found. From what we heard from the King of all Dogs earlier, Mercury had not woken up yet, quote-unquote. But with him waking up and becoming playable in the motel, it was most likely where the king decided to start his separate path to ascension, much like how he was there to start Venus off in the tutorial. Most of the things that are left unchecked will most likely be expanded upon in the sequel, much like how some things were in Gold. This new bug species may become more prevalent, we might learn more about the past of Mercury and Venus, but with the game being heavily orientated around a lot of themes of conspiracies, it's pretty obvious to say that there are a lot of different views on the game. Some say that Venus is a reincarnation of the original dragonfly deity, others say that she's the one that killed it, others say that Mercury killed it, as well as a lot of the interpreted themings of the levels throughout the game. But I don't really know. I'm not a theorist. What I can say though is that Gold is a really good step up from the original. The old levels are given a fresh paint of and in the best way possible look even more disgusting than before. Even the smaller improvements made to them, such as creature placement, just makes the levels feel nicer to play, and the additions added onto them, such as the hidden keys, feel like they were always there to begin with. The fully newer levels show off Carbonic's improvements since making the first game. They're bigger, they're grander, they're grimier. The designs we see in them are all really cool. Except Pisslipid. I never want to see Pisslipid ever again. Get him the fuck away from me. Just overall, I love all the improvements and additions to the game and its story, and I cannot wait to see more of them once the second game comes out. But that'll be all for Psychopomp until its sequel is released. This game is definitely a contender for my favorites that I've talked about on the channel. I mean, I always try to talk about the games I like. If I'm spending weeks making a video on it, I want it to be about something I enjoy. But I really enjoyed playing more of the series, and I really hope that you enjoyed watching it. And if you did, you might be happy to know that as of finishing the script, we're getting better internet at my house. So old viewers of the channel might be happy to know that soon enough streams might be returning, both here and on Twitch. But if you don't want to miss those, make sure to subscribe here and follow over on the Twitch. But once again, that'll be all for now. Sorry this video took a while to get out. Seasonal depression hit me like a truck, and the script took me forever to get done, but clearly it's out now, and that's what matters. But for now, I'll be seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.